In this lesson, we're going to be talking about WEP, which stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy. Now, WEP was a way early on in the days of Wi-Fi to give something like a wired feel to the connection that is wireless. If you're wireless, that means anybody with a radio receiver that's tuned to the right frequency can just listen in. In the case of wired, you actually have to be plugged into the network in order to capture network communication. When it comes to wireless, it's all out in the air. There's no way to limit where it's communicating to. So they came up with WEP. Now, WEP is an encryption protocol, which was really kind of the point, of course. And we've got a couple of ways of doing this here. Now, you can see that I've got WEP, and that's selected. And I've got a way of doing 64 bits, which would be 10 hexadecimal digits, or I can do 128 bits, which is 26 hex digits. So 128 bits is better, and so I'm going to select that. And now I can generate a passphrase here if I actually wanted to generate one. I can create multiple keys that I can use. So I've got a way to do 4 keys, and I can select which one is the default transmit key. I would be able to do the same thing on the client side if I actually set up WEP. Now, there's a problem with WEP, though. The problem with WEP is, in addition to the key, which itself is pretty small, the original key was only 64 bits, as you'll notice. And then, of course, we added a larger key space later on, but early implementations of WEP had a very small key. On top of that, they use an initialization vector, which is really a number that gets plugged into the whole encryption process. So you add the key to the initialization vector, that all gets plugged into the whole encryption algorithm, and then we end up with encrypted messages on the other side. The problem with WEP is that the initialization vector was not completely random. There was a problem with the way it was specified. It ended up being something that could be either computed or something that could be guessed. As a result, WEP has really for a long time now been cracked. There are a number of pieces of software that will actually crack your wireless communications if you're actually using WEP. All it really needs to do is listen long enough so that it can determine the initialization vector, and then it can determine what the key is, and it can start actually breaking apart your encrypted messages and getting the plain text out of the other end. So we really don't recommend using WEP, although WEP is at least encryption, and that's better than not doing anything at all. So if the only thing you have is WEP, that's better than actually not using any encryption whatsoever.